Hello and welcome to another video from the team here at BlenderTech.com. That's BlenderTek.com. Don't forget to remember, create your way. Today I'll be showing you how to create different kinds of image maps to use in Blender so that your textures look way more realistic. We will be using the program called ShaderMap for this. You can also use something called CrazyBump, which I believe is free, and it was the industry standard for a long time, but ShaderMap absolutely surpasses it in all ways. I believe it's fairly cheap. I can't remember how much I paid for it, but it does a great job, and it does exactly the same as CrazyBump pretty much, and it's just as easy to use, and the standard settings are basically good for you. So don't forget to subscribe for more Blender, Unity 3D, and programming videos. The team tries to add between 3 to 10 a day. So let's get started. As you can see here in my scene here in Blender, I've just created a basic plane. I've UV unwrapped it by pressing U and then unwrap, and I've unwrapped it and then opened my texture over it called Brick01, and then in my node editor I've used the image texture color into my diffuse color spot, and then the diffuse shader goes over to my material surface output. So if we change from solid to texture or material mode, you can now see that it has a nice brick pattern. But let's give it a render. As you can see, it looks like bricks, but it doesn't look extremely realistic. It looks like a flat image. It looks like you took a picture and you just glued it onto the floor, essentially. A flat floor at that, 100% flat floor. So we need to somehow create, or fake, I guess, a more realistic look. We need to have the bricks sticking out, we need to have shadows in between the bricks, we need to have certain bricks more shiny than others, and so on and so forth. And this is how you get your scenes looking absolutely amazing in Blender without too much additional effort. So let's get started. I'm going to open up ShaderMap to show, well, first actually let's show you the different maps. So here is the original image, just a simple tileable brick texture that I've downloaded off the internet with a Creative Commons license. So ShaderMap has outputted what's called a displacement map, and that basically says how far should each part of this texture be basically pushed out and look like it's 3D. So a displacement map basically fakes it as if you had modeled each and every brick by hand. So here's what the displacement map looks like. It's in grayscale, and basically the white spots are the high spots and the black spots are the low spots. So the grout or mortar are the low spots, and the high spots are bricks that would be slightly higher against all the other ones. And as you can see, since they're different shades of gray, each brick is slightly different than the next one. Next up, we have a normal map. So let's load that into Photoshop. Here you see our normal map. A normal map does the same kind of thing, but it does it in all directions. So I don't know 100% the details offhand. You'd have to research and go on Wikipedia and search up normal map. Excuse me, my mouth is getting dry. So normal map basically says, in this image texture, where should things be in left and right space. So kind of think it as an X and Y axis, whereas your displacement map is kind of like a Z axis. Normal map is always in this colored kind of bluey, purpley, kind of teal color, and the different colors have different meanings. Next we have a specular map that ShaderMap outputted. I'll quickly open that in Photoshop. So what a specular map is this tells Blender or whatever program that the white spots are going to reflect light more, hence specular. Specularity is basically how bright something is and how much it reflects light. So the white spots reflect light and the black spots reflect no light at all. So as you can see again, the grout is going to be quite dark and the bricks are going to be lit up by whatever lighting setup we have in Blender more. And that is your 4 basic maps that you're going to have. Another one that is commonly used is an ambient occlusion map. That's hard to say. An AO map that I don't know if CrazyBump can output or not. I haven't used it in a while, but I know ShaderMap does. And that would be a 5th one that you might use. And that basically just is an advanced shadowing map. I'll explain it more in a little bit. So let's open up Blender and see how we can use these to make different results and see what the changes do. So back in Blender, we've got, let's open our render result again and we'll leave it, let's put it in slot 8. So that's going to be our starting point. Let's render it quickly in slot 8. So as you can see, this is what we started with, as you might remember. So we'll leave that there so that we know what it looked like at the beginning. Next up, let's add our normal map because that's generally what's going to give you the best results with the least amount of work. Now remember, since normal maps use that bluish kind of weird colors, you can't just plug it into the color slot in, if we move back to our node editor, you can't just move it into the color slot under a diffuse shader because it uses the weird colors and it's gonna make your image, it's gonna make your texture, it's gonna make your plane look extremely weird. We have to do something special. We have to have Blender use the data in the image in a different way than we would from a regular image texture. We have to tell Blender to interpret each color as a different way, in a different way. So the first thing we're gonna have to do is open up a new image texture. So Control A, texture, image texture, and our top one is our color, our just regular color map. It's called Brick01. So for our normal map, we're gonna open, and I have it here, Brick01 normal. So it's got it open now. And if we wanted to, we could view it here in our image viewer. But we're just going to leave it like that for now. So now we have our image opened and available for use in Blender in our node system under this material for our plane. Now the node that we need to use so that Blender knows how to use the data from our normal map is called a normal map vector. So we go Control A, vector, normal map. Add it in there somewhere. So normal map nodes only work for normal map textures, as you might presume. So simply all we gotta do is take the color node from the normal map. So that's gonna take all the color data and we're gonna put it into the color node on the normal map node. And so that's gonna take all the color data and put it into the normal map node. And then take the normal output and put it onto the material output displacement node connection. Because basically what a normal map does is tells Blender how to displace each brick in this sense, in which directions and how much. So let's see how this has improved our image or not. Let's hit F12 to render. So as you can see, if we zoom in, now it kind of looks like we have a little bit of 3D space to the texture. So now as you can see, slot 8, which was our original, it looks like this. We'll zoom in a little bit. And slot 7, which was with our normal map added, looks like this. As you can see, it's added a bit more detail and it looks a bit more realistic. If I again switch back and forth, you can see the differences in the depth and I guess in the realism overall. It's slight because I didn't use extreme settings, but it's definitely there and we're getting somewhere. So it's basically just added a bit more realism and detail to the texturing and the bumpiness of the bricks, but all the bricks are at the same height, or at the same height as much as they look from our original texture. So to change that, to make them look like they actually do have more height, we're going to add in a displacement map. Displacement, again, is how far it displaces the bricks, or your texture. So this one's a little bit different. With plane selected, under the modifiers tab, or the wrench if you don't know, we need to add a displacement modifier. So that's Deform Displace. So what that does is it takes a texture in this direction, the normal direction, and it's going to displace it. So now we go to our texture tab and we click on our drop down list, and under modifiers we choose displace. So now there's no data here, so we need to add something new. So we'll hit new, and we need to choose an image or movie. So hit open, and then go to your textures and find your displacement map. So there's our displacement map. Again, remember it's the black and white one. So as you can see, it's now added in as a displacement map. Now if you use this just like it is, it wouldn't do much. That's because the displacement modifier needs to use a vertex group, and we don't have a vertex group created, and even if we did, we only have 4 vertexes to work with. So the first thing we need to do with our mesh selected in edit mode is we need to subdivide it. So I'm going to open up my toolbar, and then I'm going to hit W and subdivide, and I'm going to go all the way up. I'm going to choose 25 or so, just so that it's nice square. As you can see, nice square vertex groups for it to work with, and it roughly covers all the bricks nice and evenly. So as you can see, now it's really deformed our mesh a whole bunch with the displacement modifier. If you wanted it to do even more, you could add in another modifier. We could add in a subsurf and just give it 1, 2, 3. I'm just going to give it 1 to play with. And that will give it even more geometry to play with, as you know how a subsurf modifier works, obviously. Now, just remember that your subsurf should be above the displacement modifier. So we can click the up arrow. And now, as you can see, it's really played with the mesh a whole bunch instead of just smoothing out our original displacement. So, how your stack is aligned is very important. But in time, you'll remember which ones go above and below which other one. So as you can see, it's still extremely spiky. The reason for that is because the default settings for the displacement modifier, the strength, is 1. So we want to turn that way, way down. Whoops, I'm in the negatives. As you can see, as we go down, it turns it smoother. So we want about, see, even 0.1 is too much. Let's go 0.04 maybe? Maybe a little higher. Let's go 0.065. There you go. So as you can see, it's added a lot of displacement to our texture. And this is using our displacement map. If we didn't use a displacement map, this wouldn't have happened at all. Or I guess it would have worked, but it wouldn't be in line with our texture. So I've now turned on smooth shading. And if we turn up the subsurf modifier, you can see actually the bricks. So you can see that I've actually created too high of a value, but this gives you an idea of what the displacement modifier does. As you can see, it's obviously displaced it quite a bit. So we need to turn the strength down. Let's turn it down 0.15 maybe. Let my computer calculate that. And there, now you can see it's displaced each individual brick. And the less we use the subsurf, the less the effect. So I'm going to leave it at about 4 for preview and 6 for render. And maybe I'll turn my strength back up to 0.02. See what that looks like. There, that just added a little bit more, just to emphasize the effect a bit. Now, if you've got an object that's not flat like this and you've UV unwrapped it, you can choose the texture coordinates to UV and then select your UV map down here. So I've already unwrapped it, so I'll just select UV map. That won't make any difference because it's just unwrapped as a simple plane, but that would be useful if you've UV unwrapped a very complex shape. The direction, you can also choose the direction that it applies all this to. See, if we choose X, it does nothing, but because we have bricks that are displaced up and down, we're going to choose Z so that it's only displacing up and down as it should. So let's give this a render in slot 6 to see what happens. Blender really isn't liking this for some reason. I might have to restart. Good thing I saved just before I tried it. Okay, so now that Blender's finally figured out what it's done, you can really see the difference now if we zoom in. Sorry, that's just my chair squeaking. It's really popped the bricks out. I'm going to cancel the render here because we've got enough samples. So let's check out the difference again. So here is our original texture. Here's with the normal map. Again, slight difference. But here's with the displacement map. So now it looks almost like we've modeled each individual brick, but it's just simple image textures. So let's move on to the next one. And of course, the effects would be more extreme if you choose more extremes in CrazyBump or ShaderMap. So the next one we're going to add on is a Specular Map. And again, remember, Specular Maps is Specularity. Basically, how much each part of your texture reflects light. So to do that, we're going to be using nodes again. So I've gone back into my node editor. And let's give ourselves some room to work with. Just move this over here. Our normal map can go all the way over there. And the normal texture can move away there for now. And we'll move the diffuse nice and close. And our starting brick texture can go over there. Give ourselves some room to work. Keep things organized. So specularity. What do you think of when you think of specularity and light reflecting off a surface? You think of glossiness. To do this, you would add gloss to a surface. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to go Control A, we're going to add a shader, and we're going to add a glossy shader. Just position it somewhere. Then we're simply going to add in a mix shader. That way we can decide how much of the diffuse and how much of the glossy we want. So throw the mix shader in between there. And take our glossy and connect it to the bottom one. So now it's mixing 50% of our normal, our starting base texture, and it's gonna mix 50% of our glossy shader. Again, for extreme effects, let's turn down the roughness to 0.075 maybe, so that it's fairly shiny. And we're going to turn on the factor down to about 0.3, again, to emphasize the effect. So if we had just added this glossy shader normally, as we have done here, as you would normally do, it would give you this result. Let me just make sure I'm in slot 5 attempt. Yep, let's give it a render. Maybe I need to change the settings around. Let me change them around. Alright, so I've just moved my sun around, and you can see that it is glossy. As you can see, it's very reflective in certain spots. In fact, it's much too glossy, but I've overemphasized the fact. of what would happen if you just added a normal gloss onto this. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our Specularity map to tell Blender that basically the creases should be dark and on top should be a certain amount of glossiness, and some bricks just slightly more glossy than others depending on their angle to my sun. So we just need to drop in another image texture, this time our Specularity. So oh, why can I never find these? Texture, image texture, there it is. Alright, and this time we're going to open our Specularity one. So now that's loaded up. We could even make these a little bigger so let me know which one is which. So this time we're going to take the color node and we're going to drop it into the factor node of the mix shader. That way it'll tell Blender how much glossiness to apply in certain areas and how much of our original image just simple color diffusing to use. So let's give that a render and see what it looks like. So as you can see, the gloss has gone down and the image has changed a little bit. We don't have the extreme glossiness that we had before, but it's still way too glossy for bricks. And the way that we can change that is what you would normally do to adjust a mix shader is you would adjust the factor amount, but we don't have a factor anymore. So what we can do is we can add another mix shader. Sorry, not a mix shader, a mix RGB shader. So I'm going to do that again. Control A, color, mix RGB. And we'll just drop it in there. So now it's taking the Specularity color map into the first color, and the color's going into the factor, but color 2 I'm going to go all the way down to black. So now I can use this factor and I can adjust basically how dark or how light my Specularity map is. For example, if I went all the way up, it would turn my Specularity map basically completely black and it would take away all of the gloss. Or if I turned it all the way down, it would basically make it extremely glossy and it would take away all of the black and leave it all white. So now we can kind of play with our factor in a different way. There are different ways to do this. You could use a math node probably, but this is the best solution. So you can play with the values, and now we can give it another render on another layer to see what it looks like. So with the settings that I've chose, you can see the glossiness is still quite glossy, but it's probably gone down a little bit. But either way, playing with the values will change the glossiness. And obviously you wouldn't want them very glossy for bricks like this, but other materials you would. So this is just an example. So I've decided on a value of 0.9 to basically take away almost all of the gloss, because bricks aren't very glossy, and this is the effect that you get. Like that. So there's a little bit of gloss, as you might expect on a nice sunny day off some nice bright yellow white yellow bricks, I guess cream, whatever you would call that. And so let's look at the results again. So we had our original just simple texture. This is just a diffuse color texture map. Then what did we add on? Then we added the normal map, little change. Then we added the displacement map, big change. Then slot 5 we added just a regular glossy shader, looks kind of fake. Then slot 4 what did we do? I think, oh yeah, then we added on our our Specularity map, and then slot 3 I adjusted the settings to get what I thought was the most realistic look. So for our final image, now you can see our bricks are raised up realistically. We have glossiness in the right places, and certain bricks at different angles are glossier than others that are at other different angles, and where light shouldn't be, there's no glossiness. And we could also add on our AO map, our Ambient Occlusion map, but I forgot to generate it, and it wouldn't add that much difference. Basically, it would just make the grout really shadowy, but obviously you can see the difference between this and that is huge. So in a scene, that is going to make a huge difference to the way your textures look. And it really doesn't take too much work at all. So I'm just quickly going to show you ShaderMap just so you get an idea how to use it. CrazyBump works almost exactly the same. So it says click to load source. So I would open up an image texture. In this case, let's open up brick 03 this time. So it's just a basic brick wall. You can see it's projected onto a cylinder, and you can choose between the different objects you want. So let's choose a cube, since that's what bricks might be projected. You can hit R here and it'll make it rotate, and you can adjust the lights. You can add up to 4 lights. So I do something like that, and you can also zoom in with the mouse wheel just to see what it would look like. So this is, whoa, too far. So this is with all 5 maps this time. We have our normal, or we have our image, just our regular diffuse image map. We have our normal map added on. We have our, which one is this now? That is our Specularity, I believe. Yep, that's our Specularity map. This is our AO map. You can see basically that just adds more or less shadow. Very slight effects. And it takes a while to render. But you can see at 0, it's a completely white image, and at 100, it's completely black, or it's filled in all the grout lines black with more shadow. And again, it's a very, very slight effect. As you can see, if I turn it down, everything's in real time, which is great about CrazyBump and ShaderMap, is everything's in real time. As you can see, there's a slight effect. Basically, things just get a little more shadowy where they should be when you add on an AO map. And I'll do that in an add-on video, like I said, since I forgot to generate it. And you can create as many maps as you, well, I guess up to 9 maps if you needed to at one time in ShaderMap, and you can save them individually, or you can click Save All, and it'll save it to the same directory, and it'll just append the file name, underscore, and then displacement, norm, spec, etc. And it works the exact same way in CrazyBump if you want to download that. And the settings are similar, and you can just play with them. You can see them in real time. So these are great programs to use for making your textures look extremely realistic and extremely lifelike, and it's going to take your scenes and it's going to make the realism 10-fold at least better. It's going to make it from, wow, that looks pretty cool, to, is that a picture or is that a model? I really cannot tell. So that's basically all I have for different image mappings for today. Thanks for watching from the team here at BlenderTech.com. Again, that's BlenderTek.com. If you enjoyed this video and learned something, please like it. And don't forget to subscribe for more Blender, Unity, and programming videos. We try to add between 3 to 10 a day. If you disliked this video for some reason, please leave a comment or email us at info@blendertech.com about what you did not like and what we can improve on. We also take requests for tutorials, so let us know what you'd like or what you'd like more content of. And don't forget to remember, create your way.